We are cruising towards the end of April. Not quite the beginning of April yet, but we're cruising towards the end of April, which means that there is time for me to indulge in my one very fun hobby, mock drafts. Welcome to the Scrambling Armchair Chiefs news, analysis, and opinion every day, and we are here for another mock draft for the 2025 NFL Draft. Plus 5 UDFAs at the end. And I have to say before we get started, if this is the way things fall, if things fall the way they did in this mock draft and the Kansas City Chiefs come away with these players, I think that we would be setting up for another leg of the dynasty. Beginning round 1, pick 31 with James Pearce Jr., the edge out of Tennessee. 6'5", 245 pounds, 10-inch hands, 32 3/4-inch arms, a 4.47 40-yard dash with a 1.56 10-yard split, a 31-inch vert, and a 123-inch broad jump. James Pearce is very light on his feet and will not have to engage with offensive linemen on every play. There will be times where he is able to set an offensive lineman up with his burst off the ball and then either just trucking around the edge or setting up a cutback lane for himself. That is the type of athlete that he is. You're counting on that translating to the NFL. I don't think that he will be able to do that as often as he was able to do that in college, but I do think that he will get away with it at times in the NFL. He's got interesting techniques, I think, with his hands, because he's very good at keeping both of his hands free to make the tackle, but sometimes he does this by putting a shoulder into the offensive lineman. Sometimes he does this with a very deep pass rush. Offensive coordinators in the NFL will take advantage of this at times, but I don't think you want to predicate your entire offense around being able to take advantage of James Pearce on a deep pass rush. So I don't think that it will necessarily hurt him in the NFL. That said, he's not bad versus the run, but you're certainly going to see a step down in his side of the field versus George Karlaftis' side of the field. But you are sacrificing a little bit of safety versus the run for a whole lot of pop versus the passing game. One thing that we see from George Karlaftis is that he is very good at setting the edge. So, if you were able to have Pearce force a quarterback towards George Karlaftis, that sack still gets made. Luckily, for the Chiefs, sacrificing a little bit versus the run at your edge position is made possible by the fact that you have a linebacking core that is absolutely lights out. So that will wash out a little bit, but you would still like to see him improve a bit versus the run. It does look like he has the frame to add a bit of weight, even if it's a bit of bad weight. He's very slight, and he has short arms, so he's a little undersized in some capacity, but he is tall, and 245 pounds, while it is thin, is not, it's within the realm of reasonable. Like, he's not a 220-pound defensive end. He's 245. I think he could get up to 255, maybe 260. I think that might be stretching it, but he is very thin around his core. So one way that gets taken advantage of that is sort of imperceptible is that when you're a guy who's very thin at the waist, those 330-pound offensive tackles can fold you a little bit. So we have to hope that he is solid through the core. It looks to me like he's a guy who has always played bully ball. So he does not use a lot of technique, and he even got away with playing some bully ball in the SEC, so he does definitely have some of the stuff to translate to the NFL, but he does have some stuff up his sleeves as far as techniques are concerned, but bully ball will not get him far in the NFL, so you're counting on the ability for your coaches to coach him up, teach him a little bit better with hand placement, teach him a little bit better. I don't know that he has the greatest ability to reroute his rush plan. So when he gets stuffed one place, I don't know that he has the best ability to put up a secondary or third layer of pass rush. But look, not a lot of guys do coming out of college. This is a top-tier talent that would immediately upgrade the defense and would immediately start opposite George Karlaftis and would change the dynamic that teams have to use against the Kansas City Chiefs. You have to account for him when he is on the field, which means that you're accounting for him and Chris Jones, and you're going to have to account for George Karlaftis at least a little bit, right? You have to designate resources towards George Karlaftis. This will keep George Karlaftis from being double-teamed, I think. Round 2, pick 63, Ariante Ersery out of Minnesota, the offensive tackle out of Minnesota, 6'6", 331 pounds, 9.5-inch hands, 33 and 1/8 inch arms, which is just barely above that level that you like to see for an offensive tackle. A 5.01 40-yard dash at the combine with a 1.75 10-yard split and a 111-inch broad jump. It would not shock anyone, I don't believe, to see Ersery go in the first round. So getting him at 63 would be a huge win. And speaking of huge, Ersery is a legit 6'6" and a legit 331 pounds and still managed to run a 5.01 40-yard dash, which is 91st percentile, and pop off a 111-inch broad jump, which is 89th percentile. So when you're watching him on film, I think sometimes he will remind you of Orlando Brown Jr. on a snap-by-snap basis, just kind of watching him. But it is worth remembering that this is a much more explosive athlete than Orlando Brown Jr. Maybe not as strong, but he does have more speed and athleticism to him. This past season, he went head-to-head in one of the best matchups of the college football season, went head-to-head with Abdul Carter. You might remember that. It was a big deal in the media. Abdul Carter might be the number one football player in this draft. Were it not for Travis Hunter, I think he would be widely considered the best football player in this draft. And Abdul Carter, is likely to be one of the best pass rushers in the NFL early in his career. In that game, Carter was held without a sack and without a hit on the quarterback. Ersery did not shut him down, but in my opinion, Ersery won that battle with a guy who was likely to be a very high first-round pick, with a guy who was likely to be a multi-time Pro Bowler. So this was a true NFL type of matchup at the college level, and I think Ersery won it. I think his upside is a good left tackle. I think that his upside is maybe Orlando Brown plus, right? I mentioned Orlando Brown a little bit earlier, but I think his upside ceiling, right? We're talking absolute ceiling, is probably a little bit better than Orlando Brown Jr. His floor is a plus right tackle. I think that this guy is a starter in the NFL. I don't think he offers any upside at offensive guard, but being a true tackle at this point, offering upside at offensive guard is as irrelevant as saying I'm going to knock Xavier Worthy because he does not offer upside at tight end, right? The offensive tackle position is the much more valuable position, and he will be a starter at that position. I wouldn't say that he has the greatest of footwork, but he is surprisingly light on his feet. He is effective with his footwork. So if I'm making comparisons, this is sort of the same thing as saying Mahomes has terrible but effective throwing mechanics. One of the big knocks on Mahomes coming out was that you just didn't know where that ball was going to come from, and it didn't matter because he was good at throwing it. That's kind of how I feel about Ersery's feet. Both of the Chiefs' preliminary starting tackles this season are already on the roster. So you've kind of cringed to take a guy in the second round who might not be on the field week 1, snap 1. But neither of those tackles that the Chiefs currently have are long-term answers. Moore is here on a 2-year contract, and I don't think anyone expects Taylor in Kansas City beyond next season, so long as there is another answer available at the right tackle position. That said, I don't think anyone here would complain about having too many offensive tackles. Anyone want to complain about having too many starting caliber offensive tackles on the roster? B, I'm not sure he wouldn't start by midseason, no matter what Moore and Taylor end up doing this year. He is a guy that I think is talented enough to eventually find his way on the field regardless. Then we have round 3, pick 66. Alfred Collins, the nose tackle out of Texas, 6'6", 332 pounds. So we have two guys here that are 6'6", 6'7", 331, 332, 10-inch hands, 34 and 5/8-inch arms, is projected to run a 4.95 40. I don't think he ever actually ran one. 26-inch vertical, 96-inch broad jump. These are not explosive numbers. If this were 2005, if this were 20 years ago, Alfred Collins is a first-round pick. This is not 2005. The running game is not as vital as it used to be. Running backs are not the premier position in the NFL. So here he is in the 3rd round. I'm not totally positive he makes it here in real life, but he was there in the mock draft from PFF, so I took him there. While he does not offer any upside in the pass versus the pass, unless he's splitting a block, he can do that. A quarterback would have to be absolutely mental to see George Karlaftis and Chris Jones barreling down on him and make the decision, hey, I'm going to step up in the pocket and run towards Alfred Collins. Pairing this pick with Pearce in the 1st round, and all of a sudden, the Chiefs' entire defensive line, left to right, is a nightmare. It would be a complete transformation just with these two players in one offseason, added in one offseason. He has long arms, and they show on tape. He gets them up into passing lanes. He extends them against offensive linemen, right? Shoving off like that to keep his distance. He punches the peanut. He gets his hand in there on ball carriers. And he is very capable of making arm tackles. And honestly, I think that it's weird to say, not really his hands as much as his arms are an underrated part of his game. Number 4 here, he will be 24 this season. 24 years old as a rookie is not Brett Veach's bag. So maybe that counts against him. That is probably part of the factor that pushes him down draft boards. Again, pairing this pick with Pearce and Collins, who are both instant starters for the Chiefs, would remake the defensive line, in a single draft, and would set the Chiefs up for stability in the post-Jones era whenever that happens. Collins as a rock next to Jones makes Jones more dangerous. Collins as a rock in front of Nick Bolton keeps Nick Bolton clean. Collins' frame cuts down passing lanes, right? Getting those arms up, cuts down passing lanes, especially in that 5 to 7 yard downfield range, which makes it harder for the quarterback to complete a pass to a tight end over the middle of the field, which is something that absolutely tore the Kansas City Chiefs apart last season. It was probably the weakest part of their defense when the defense was whole, right? When the defense had everyone on the field, it was still the tight end that was posing problems for the defense, and a lot of that happening right over the middle of the field, a lot of that happening in the 5 to 7 yard range. So having Collins makes that more difficult, despite the fact that he's not going to add a whole lot towards the pass rush. Then we get round 3, pick 95, Savion Williams. If you have not watched a Savion Williams highlight reel, do yourself a favor. Pull one up on YouTube. The wide receiver out of TCU, 6'4" tall, 222 pounds, 10.25-inch hands, 32.5-inch arms, ran a 4.48 40-yard dash at the combine with a 1.52 10-yard split. Williams is one of my favorite prospects in this draft class from an I can't wait to see this perspective. He is going to be an extremely interesting player to follow in the NFL, and I hope that happens in Kansas City. If that happens in Kansas City, at pick number 95, it will be all the better. He has starting X potential, but he's not there right now. That said, with Rice likely being absent early in the season, I say if you have Savion Williams on the roster, you trot him out there at the X position early on, and you throw too much on his shoulders. You weigh him down early, and you see if you can win those games anyway. And if that happens, if you're giving Savion Williams those reps at that position that early, when you get Rice back, Williams is able to catch up. He's able to figure out what it was that he needed to do, and it pays dividends late in the season. Beyond that, a wide receiver lineup of Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, and Savion Williams is nasty. Put Mahomes out there with an empty backfield and Kelsey to go over the middle, Brown streaking deep with Worthy, and then you have Rice and Williams lurking in the mid-range, and Mahomes gets to pick the defense's poison. That would be a nasty, nasty offense. Savion Williams is fast. He's fast enough, a 4.48. He's got wiggle, and he can go and get the ball. He can go up and get the ball. He can go deep and get the ball. He can run through people, 222 pounds. And in addition to being fast enough, he's quick. He ran a 4.48 40-yard dash, which is 59th percentile. That's a good 40-yard dash, not a great 40-yard dash. That's a good number. But he ran a 1.52 10-yard split, which is 80th percentile. And I know I say this all the time, but Mahomes has never had a wide receiver like this. People say all the time Andy Reid likes the small, shifty guys. He doesn't want those big, lumbering wide receivers. Well, Savion Williams isn't lumbering. He's big, and he's not the fastest guy. He's one of the quickest. But you can't look me in the eyes and tell me that the greatest offensive mind in the NFL, Andy Reid, and the greatest quarterback talent in the NFL, Patrick Mahomes, can't figure out how to use a 6'4", 222-pound wide receiver who runs a 4.48 40-yard dash. You just can't make that make sense to me. Now, he's not the greatest at catching the football, which is a very large part of being a guy on the field who is tasked with catching the football. But he does make some freakish catches, and he's not the greatest route runner, but he's pretty good at getting open. And he's not the greatest blocker, but you can teach that. And if you tell him his game check is depending on it, then he's going to learn. Pardon me. All of those things said, the Chiefs would not be drafting him to be wide receiver number 1. They would be drafting him to be wide receiver number 4 and an absolute matchup nightmare, which he would be the very first time he stepped onto the field. And then we get to the 4th round where the Kansas City Chiefs will take another offensive prospect, this being a running back from Michigan, Kalel Mullings. Anyone named after Superman, I am absolutely pro-drafting. 6'2", 226 pounds, 10-inch hands, very large hands for a running back, 31 3/4-inch arms, and a projected 4.62 40-yard dash. I don't know if Michigan has had their pro day. I don't know if he has already used or lost his chance at a pro day 40-yard dash. If he can run faster than a 4.62, that would be very good for him. Audric Estime, who came out of Notre Dame last year, was as close to Kareem Hunt as I've maybe ever seen. But Mullings has some of those same qualities, for the good and the bad. He's not a sudden athlete. He does not have one-cut home run speed. He might not have two-cut home run speed. Those things said, he does have functional speed. That is what we saw from Kareem Hunt when he came back to the Kansas City Chiefs last year. Enough speed to constantly get forward progress. That's what the Kansas City Chiefs need. He falls forward, another big thing for Kareem Hunt last year, and he breaks tackles. Those things are all good for the Kansas City Chiefs and things that they have lacked a little bit in recent seasons. I will not say that he has elite vision, but I do think that he has better vision than Isaiah Pacheco. Isaiah Pacheco seems like a homing missile straight for the back of Trey Smith's jersey. It is a strange thing. If he was better, now we saw him get a little bit better last year. I don't want to sound like I am talking down Isaiah Pacheco, but he does seem to go straight for piles of people very often. And because of that, Mullings might be a better down-to-down back than Pacheco, and that might be what the Chiefs need from their running game. They do not need a running game that is the star of the show. They need a running game that has to be respected. They need to get 4 yards per play. If they can get 4 yards per play out of their running game, like they got out of Kareem Hunt when he first returned to the Chiefs last year, it makes a world of difference for the offense. The defense has to play more base. They have to play more honest. And that helps Patrick Mahomes out just enough that he is able to do so much more. This would be another move that would make the Kansas City Chiefs tougher, which seems to be the direction that the Chiefs want to take this roster. Veach seems to be drafting tough, hard-nosed football players more often than not, more often than flashy players, more often than the higher performance guys, if that makes any sense. So this would fit into that mold, and along that same line, Kalel Mullings would have been a Division I linebacker. So that's a tough guy. If he is not starting at running back, he will be able to contribute on special teams. Along those same lines, if he's not starting at running back, I do think he's an NFL guy. Drafting Mullings makes the running back position a very sticky situation with 4 guys who are all NFL guys. I don't know if they can keep 4 running backs and a fullback on the roster, so Carson Steele might be in trouble if the Kansas City Chiefs do take a running back like Kalel Mullings in this draft. And you look at perhaps like some of those Marty Schottenheimer type fullbacks. Sometimes you had a fullback that was smaller than your running back, right? Kimball Anders and Bam Morris back there. But this could be a situation where Mullings can make himself into a fullback, halfback kind of guy versus just being a fullback like Sausage was, or being the sort of just a halfback like you're getting out of Kareem Hunt or Isaiah Pacheco. This is a guy who could be on the field with a running back behind him. Then we jump to the 7th round. Here we have Smael Mondon Jr., the linebacker out of Georgia. If you miss Willie Gay, this is the guy for you. 6'2", 224 pounds, a 79 1/4 inch wingspan, a 4.58 40-yard dash with a 1.52 10-yard split. That is an 83rd percentile 40-yard dash with a 95th percentile 10-yard split, and a 130-inch broad jump. That is 98th percentile. When you start getting into the 7th round, so the way I steal these graphics here from Draft Buzz, yellow is a sort of 50% type number. Red is a bad number, so 224 weight bad. The orange number is getting bad. The green is a good number. That is the type of number you want. The blue numbers are elite. So when you get into the 7th round, if you're getting a character that has 3 elite numbers and a good number, as far as measurables are concerned, as far as testing numbers are concerned, that's great, right? So rolling the dice on someone like Smael Mondon here this would be awesome. He's an athletic linebacker that would have to earn his keeps. Didn't know what I was writing there. I missed an N. He would have to earn his keeps for a couple years on special teams, but it would eventually bring a little bit of that Willie Gay flair back to the defense. He's not as sturdy as Bolton or Chanel in either strength or being contact ready. He does have some injury history, the same way we saw with Willie Gay. So having him on the roster, has a little bit of question with it, but he does offer a lot of upside as a blitzer because he is such an explosive athlete. He is solid in coverage. That is a good thing to see from a linebacker that is so explosive, so fast, and he can deliver big hits and offers surprising tackle ability. What do I mean by that? Sometimes you don't see him on his way to the ball carrier. He just smashes into him. So can be a very violent player in that regard. Moving on to round 7, pick 251, Jordan Hancock, the safety out of Ohio State, 6 feet tall, 195 pounds, 8 5/8 inch hands, 30 3/4 inch arms, a 4.45 projected 40-yard dash. That is not an official number. I think you're in trouble if you want him to step in at the outside cornerback position, but I think he can do it. He has starting potential at either safety position, and he can play the nickel. Veach loves this type of versatility in a defensive back, and Spag's defense is best when he's got a couple of these guys on the field so that he can disguise blitzes. You don't know where someone is coming from if you're not quite sure what position everyone is playing. He is fast enough to offer upside as a blitzer against immobile quarterbacks. Just ask Brady Cook. But I would not want to see him on a 1-versus-1 versus the likes of a Jalen Hurts of the world. You don't want to see that happening. He's a very smart player. This is something that would make him dangerous in a Spags defense. I think he's comparable to Chamari Connor, who admittedly has not made the impact that was hoped for on defense at this point. You're looking at a guy with this pick and the next one, really, that are closer to their ceilings approaching the NFL than a lot of the defensive backs that Brett Veach has selected. But a lot of the defensive backs that Brett Veach has selected never really hit their ceilings. Joshua Williams looked like he could have been a stud on defense. He hasn't gotten there. Jalen Watson, I had to delete the video because I got in trouble with YouTube, but I said very early, this guy could be a starter. He was taken in the late 7th round. He looked like a starter immediately. He became one, but he hasn't been an elite starter, right? And then we have a rash of safeties that Brett Veach has drafted or taken as UDFA otherwise that have proven that they're NFL players, but haven't really developed. So taking this player here, he is closer to his ceiling, but I think that means he has a much higher floor as well. He is a very smart player. I already got that. Perhaps his best ability as a pro is his ability to close. So once the ball leaves the quarterback's hands, he's there lickety-split. I imagine he has some pretty good cone drill numbers. 7th round, pick 257, Malachi Moore, the safety out of Alabama, 5'11", 196. Spitting image of the previous player, a 4.50 40-yard dash. Multiple picks in the 7th round. Veach is going to draft multiple defensive backs. Here's another smart defensive back who is best suited to play safety. These 2 picks back-to-back make another name or two on the roster expendable. I do think that the Chiefs have a whole lot of NFL guys at defensive back. They don't have a lot of this is my starter at defensive back. Not yet. They don't have a lot of Hicks is going to get there, right? McDuffie is there. Watson, seemingly begrudgingly by the coaching staff, became one of them. I think both of these guys are both NFL guys, and they will make a couple more names on the roster expendable. If you can squeeze something out of someone else, securing those spots, and then we see a trade or two in training camp, it could be the best case scenario. What you're doing is you're keeping a rookie contract. You're pushing out that rookie contract because, for example, Chamari Connor has experience in the league now, hasn't really developed like you would have hoped. You make him expendable, for example. You get to trade him. Maybe it's a 7th round pick. Maybe it's a reserve offensive tackle. Whatever it is, right? You get something out of it. But then you reset the rookie contract at the safety position. He's at his best when he's kept clean. Short arms make it difficult, make it a struggle for him to disengage. I don't think he offers starting level potential, but I do think that he's an NFL guy who sticks on the roster and ends up getting reps at defense as well as on special teams. I think he could be a core special teamer. Moving on to the ranks of UDFA, undrafted rookie free agents. And we're going to start here. A guy who made waves this week, and I don't mean because he pulled a cannonball into the ocean. Desmond Watson, nose tackle out of Florida. They had their pro day. The numbers that I was able to find on him were this: 6'6". It's big. 464 pounds. That's not a typo. This guy is Chris Jones with Xavier Worthy on his back. 464 pounds, ran a 5'9", 340-yard dash, a 25-inch vertical, and 36 reps on the bench press. Now, yesterday's video was about defensive tackles in the draft. Gary chimed in on that one, talking about Desmond Watson, and said that he found the numbers that were 37 reps on the bench press, not a big difference from 36, but a difference, and a 5'2", 40. Now, I don't know where those numbers came from. The only numbers I was able to find were from the pro day yesterday, which were 36 reps, 5'9", 340. If he ran a 5'2", he's going to get drafted. If he ran a 5'2" at some point, he's going to be drafted. That would be incredible for a man that weighs over 4,500 pounds. His biggest downside is his health. And I am not saying this to make fun of anyone. I'm not saying this because it's a funny topic. I'm saying this because it's an absolutely true topic. He's 6'6", 464 pounds. His heart's about that big. Everybody's heart is about the size of a clenched fist. 464 pounds is a lot to be moving around for 50 reps per game. He's not going to play 50 reps per game, even if he is an NFL guy. He's a 10 rep per game guy. Now, I think that he's unlikely to be an NFL talent, but man, do I want to find that out in St. Joe versus anywhere else. Just imagine this defensive line with Alfred Collins at defensive tackle, Desmond Watson at nose tackle, George Karlaftis and Chris Jones as defensive ends. That brotherly shove is going absolutely nowhere, baby. Absolutely nowhere. Jalen Hurts or not. Then we have the next UDFA, Will Rogers, quarterback out of Washington, 6'2", 207. These numbers don't matter all that much for quarterbacks, but a vert of 33.5, 76th percentile, 113-inch broad jump, 62nd percentile, 3-cone drill, 6'9", 76th percentile. These are explosive numbers, which is a little bit confounding based on his strengths and weaknesses. He does not have a very strong arm, so to have those explosion numbers, maybe there's just something in there you have to tweak to get a little bit better deep ball out of him. I say you just keep bringing in quarterbacks and see if you can get a multi-year backup, a cheap backup that you can polish up and make into a tradable asset, or you have that backup on the roster and you don't have to keep bringing in expensive veterans to hold a clipboard. He has good accuracy. Worst case scenario, you have an accurate quarterback who throws a pretty spiral that will give you good work as a live arm for training camp. Best case scenario, you've got a backup quarterback that you can trade for a draft pick at some point. Here's my thought on Will Rogers. And this might be absolutely ridiculous. If there is a Brock Purdy in this draft class, I think it's Will Rogers. If there's a guy who falls in the draft, but he is an NFL guy that could give starting reps someplace, it's Will Rogers. The guy is deadly accurate, not very big, not very fast, so he's not going to turn a lot of heads that way. Doesn't have a cannon arm, neither does Brock Purdy. He's a smart quarterback. He's very accurate. You put those two things together, and guys, push comes to shove, that might win you a couple football games. I think if I had to choose between the two, I might want, and this is assuming that neither of them take the field, I might want Will Rogers over Gardner Minshew. I really might. And that sounds ridiculous because Minshew has won games at the NFL level. He has been a multi-year starter. I think there's a lot of potential in Will Rogers' game. That said, there's a very low floor. Might not be an NFL guy. UDFA Carson Vinson, offensive tackle out of Alabama A&M. 6'7", 314 pounds, 10 1/4 inch hands, 34 1/2 inch arms, an 84 3/4 inch wingspan. Ran a 5'1", 240-yard dash, a 111-inch broad jump, a 7.5 1/3 cone drill. Remember when I was making the point about the colors a couple minutes ago? You're looking at a UDFA with 4 greens and a blue. You take that chance. Very long arm, not extremely long arms, but very long arms, but he does not use them well. That said, he doesn't extend a lot, but he absorbs rushers very well. I don't know how well he's going to be able to do that in the NFL, so you're going to want to coach him. He has plus size, he has good mobility, but he will need some coaching all around. I think that he has active feet, but I don't think that they're very good feet. I don't think they're very accurate feet. If you can coach him into using his hands and you can coach him into decent footwork, you've got a prospect on your hands. You've got a guy who will be in the NFL for a while. He might offer upside at offensive guard. I think his ceiling is likely swing tackle. The backup guy who kind of you shove in there when someone gets hurt. At this point, though, there's no reason not to bring him in. His strength is a little concerning, but you bring him in, you put him on the practice squad for a couple years, and then you've probably got an offensive lineman. You've got a Mike Caliendo at the who can play tackle. UDFA Rock Taylor, wide receiver out of Memphis, 6'2", 213 pounds, 32 1/4 inch arms, 78 5/8 inch wingspan, a 4.49 40, which is good enough, and a 1.53 10-yard split, which is definitely a respectable number. He is an interesting size, 6'2", 213, speed, 4.49/153 combo, who is a good hands catcher and is willing to do the dirty work. He's willing to do those nasty routes over the middle of the field. He's willing to do those routes where he has to just turn around and get the ball near the sideline, 4 yards downfield, whatever it is. He's willing to do all of that. He's an interesting case because I am simultaneously absolutely positive he does not get drafted, while being absolutely positive he does make an active NFL roster as a rookie. I think he's one of these guys that you get into camp and he's just going to turn too many heads. He's going to be too consistent. He's going to be too productive to try to move to the practice squad, and he will be on the lower end of a roster for a long time. He's Justin Watson with the ability to run out routes. So I think that if the Chiefs do get him, they have a ready-made position in the offense for him. Speaking of ready-made positions in the offense for him, guys who remind me of someone else, the final UDFA here, Arian Smith, wide receiver out of Georgia. Who do you think it reminds me of? 6 foot, 179 pounds, 4.3640. 4.3640. 151 10-yard split, 127-inch broad jump, 38-inch vert, 3-cone drill of 6.82. That's basically a green number. You're looking at a UDFA with 4 greens and a blue. The weight is concerning. If you're bringing in a UDFA wide receiver, take a gamble on a big school talent with great speed and explosion numbers. That's this guy here. Look at the name again. Get up here. Okay. The bounce is broken. Arian Smith out of Georgia. What's that? Our Mecole Hardman is worn out? We ought to stop by Georgia and grab another. That is exactly what I think you would be looking at with him in your offense. He has to work on his hands to stick in the NFL. He drops passes. That said, it would be intriguing to stash him on the practice squad, set him up in front of a jugs machine, see if you can get that fixed. And a year later, you've got a Mecole Hardman on the roster who can flash a little bit and be an actual contributor. A guy this fast, if you can get him up to 185, you don't have to throw him the ball. Give him an end around. Give him one of those flip passes. Whatever it is, just get the ball in his hands. This class, should this be the Kansas City Chiefs class, the draft class, I think this would change the complexion of this team immediately. This would be, you've got explosive players. You've got players that are going to carry the football and just get upfield, which is something that at times this running game lacks. You have 2 defensive linemen that would absolutely change the respectability of that defensive line, change the way that Spags is able to go after quarterbacks. I think this would be a very good draft for the Kansas City Chiefs. That's all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. We've dropped a video every day for over 2 years now, and I hope to have you back for the next one.